9:16 on the dot. Customer called, said he lost power to half his house. And as you can see, the main break is getting hot on the back side of it. Now, before I showed up, I had him call the power company, because a lot of times when you get calls like this, it's a loose connection at the top of the house or the top of the pole that the power company can fix for free because they owe you power. But he called me back and said the power company said the connections were tight. So I headed over and pulled the panel cover because he asked if I could figure it out. And I said, can I ever? Now, visually, I found a problem, but I want to make sure that's the only problem and what's causing it, right? So now, from the meter, I have 120 on each phase. Yes, I call it phase. I know it's a leg. It's not physically a phase, but we all know what I'm talking about. And it doesn't really matter. I don't know why you guys get so upset about that. For the sake of avoiding the comments, I'll call it a leg. Now, when I test these bus bars, look, I have 0 on this one and 120 on the one above it, which means I have power coming in. I just don't have the power leaving. And if you look at the bottom of that main breaker, you can see where the heat is. Now, the power's off here. Don't ever touch those bus bars. Look at the corrosion scraping off. I have good bus bars on the bottom, so I am going to push this whole panel down to make it safe until I can come back and do a panel swap. But in order to make it safe, I got to swap out that main, and I started pulling out individual breakers to see how many were getting hot. And there were a couple of them. When you see corrosion like this in a panel, it's usually due to water, right? So the water gets in there, corrodes the bus bars, and the corrosion ends up making a space in between the bus bar of the panel and the bus clamp on the end of the breaker. And when you have a space, the electricity tends to jump the space, creating an arc, which creates heat, and you end up getting a failure, which is good about electricity. You usually have a failure before you have a fire. Not always, but most of the time. So with my PI skills, I'm investigating, and I see the off color of the inside of the insulation on the SEU and puddling up on the main breaker here. But I'm like, there's a loop here. The water would sit at the lowest point. So I slit open this insulation and water just started pouring out. I also might call this an SER by accident, but come on, guys. Is it that serious? You must be getting a ton of water to get over that hump, right? So the low point is filled with water, as we can see, and then when more water comes in, it gets over that hump and drips into the panel, which is not good. So this wire is also going to have to be replaced. And the scary part is, a lot of people might have overseen that, and the water would have just sat in there and corroded the shit out of those neutral strands. So I'm glad I caught it. Now, there's no still water on the bottom of this meter socket, so I know it's coming in from the top and following down the inside of the wire. And this is why I don't use SEU on the side of the houses. I always use pipe. It will always outlast this shit. And look at the little pore holes. The stuff sitting out in the sun, it cracks, you know, this one's starting to deteriorate. It's got the little holes. The water gets in the holes, falls its way down through the meter socket, down into the wire, into the panel, and you have this issue. So this is a full service change without a doubt. But like a lot of us, he's tight on cash right now. He can't afford the whole job. So I said, listen, we'll do the inside now. We'll make it safe, but you're going to have to do the outside. If you don't do the outside, you'll just keep replacing panels on the inside because you're not fixing the problem. You're just band-aiding it. Now, I can't do a panel swap today, so I'm moving all these breakers down to good buses. Luckily, he had room to do that, and we'll abandon the shit corroded buses at the top. This will make it safe enough for the next week until I can get back to swap out the whole panel, and then in the spring, I'm going to come back and do the outside. I'll figure out a way to keep the water from going in the new wire until that point. I'll make a video on it. Now, like I said, these are dead, don't ever touch them, but I'm just showing you the corrosion on the top three, and then look at the bottom one. It's pretty clean. It's safe to use. Now, when I pull out this old 100 amp breaker, I'm going to show you how it was getting hot. You can actually see the burn marks on it. And when there's heat on metal, the metal tends to loosen up, right? So there's the new 100 amp breaker, and here's the old one. I'm going to stick my screwdriver in there, and you can see the screwdriver have play within the clamps on the back of that breaker. Look, I can stick it in there and wiggle it a little, right? You see it moving? That's a shit connection. Now, if I try to do that on the new breaker, the mechanics might move, but the screwdriver is so tight, it's moving the mechanics. The screwdriver isn't moving within the mechanics, if that makes sense. And when I stab it on, you'll see it's a nice tight grab, kid. So we moved everything down. We made it safe. We're going to swap this panel out in a week. and do the outside in a couple months, but everything's gonna be good to go. So let's throw the meter back on, do a full send. Yeah, the cardboard looks like shit, but it's gonna get us through. Nothing's gonna fall in there, so we'll finish this one up with a slap and bang it until next week.